It was just past 4 a.m. on October 17, 2025, and there I was, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee in the control room at the Mojave Deep Space Array, a remote complex nestled in California's arid desert. The place was cold, sterile, and eerily quiet. Only the hum of servers and the occasional beep from the monitors broke the silence. I'm Tom Reynolds, a young technician working the graveyard shift, and little did I know that this night would change everything. My eyes were glued to the streaming data from the array's colossal dish, a gleaming monument to human curiosity aimed skyward, hungry for whispers from the cosmos. Tonight, we were tracking an interstellar object that had been stirring up speculation for months, something dubbed 3I Atlas. The name sounded like a rejected Marvel villain, but this object was no comic book character. It had entered our solar system with an odd trajectory, a strange glow, and properties that left us scratching our heads. As I sifted through the endless river of numbers, mostly static, cosmic background noise, I noticed something unusual flickering on the screen. At first, I thought my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. Then the pattern repeated. A precise electromagnetic pulse lasting exactly 11.3 seconds, followed by an engineered silence so clean it felt like someone had hit the cosmic mute button. Then, after a long pause, 47 minutes to be exact, the pulse came again, clockwork perfect. I blinked and leaned closer. Okay, universe, what are you trying to tell us? I muttered. The sequence was unlike anything natural. Pulsars had rhythm, sure, but not this mechanical precision. Magnetars were wild and chaotic, not surgical. Quasars, too distant and diffuse. This was something else, a deliberate broadcast. Within hours, the signal was confirmed by observatories worldwide. The mood back at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory was anything but Hollywood panic. Instead, the room buzzed with a quiet reverence, a collective holding of breath. This was the moment scientists had dreamt of for generations. Proof that we were no longer alone, or at least that someone or something was trying to talk to us. I remember one of the lead engineers, a grizzled veteran named Jack, leaning over and whispering, "Tom, if this is a message, it's the cosmic equivalent of a text from your ex. You're not sure if you want to read it, but you can't stop yourself." As the hours ticked by, the signal's power grew steadily, almost as if the ancient object was waking from a long slumber. It was measured, deliberate. Not a scream, but a whisper gathering strength. Then, just as we were settling into decoding mode, the signal shifted dramatically. From a broad broadcast into the void, it tightened, focused. A laser-like beam pointed straight at Earth. That's when the room went completely silent. The stranger had not just sent a message. It had aimed it directly at us. And I, Tom Reynolds, was the first to see it happen. The beam locked onto Earth like a spotlight at a sold-out concert, except no one was cheering. Just a room full of scientists holding their breath. The Mojave control room, usually cluttered with chatter and jokes, fell into a hush so deep you could hear the faint hum of the cooling systems. I glanced around, noticing Dr. Emily Carter, the project's lead astrophysicist, standing near the window. She wore a sleek black dress that hugged her figure, paired with ankle boots that clicked softly against the floor as she paced. Her silver pendant caught the dim light, a delicate spiral, almost like a miniature galaxy. There was an intensity in her gaze that made it clear she wasn't just thinking about equations. She was wrestling with the enormity of what we were witnessing. Emily stopped and turned to the team. "This frequency," she said, voice steady but charged. "It's exactly 1.42 gigahertz. The hydrogen line. The water hole. The universal channel every civilization with a telescope would recognize as the cosmic gathering spot." I half joked under my breath. So, someone out there really knows how to throw a party. But Emily wasn't smiling. The signal wasn't a simple beep or a steady tone. It was layered like a cosmic Russian nesting doll. Inside the 11.3-second pulse were subpulses every 1.7 seconds, and within those even faster flickers like a Morse code on steroids. Our cryptographers and AI specialists were brought in fast, their eyes glued to screens filled with complex waveforms and mathematical hieroglyphs. I watched a young woman named Rachel, the lead cryptographer, bite her lip as she stared at the puzzle, her auburn hair falling over her glasses. She kept tapping a pen against her notebook, the rhythm strangely echoing the pulse we were tracking. Hours melted into days. The signal wasn't fading, it was evolving. It compressed, modulated, and gained a richness that made it sound almost musical, though no one could say what kind of song it was playing. The idea that this was a simple status beacon or a cosmic hello, I'm here, started to feel too small for what we were hearing. Late on October 20th, the signal shifted again. The broad broadcast collapsed into a narrow, intense beam aimed directly at Earth. We cross-checked with the Arecibo Legacy Observatory, which had just come back online, and they confirmed it. This wasn't random. This was targeted. The implication hit me like a shot of espresso. Whoever or whatever was behind this had chosen us. Not by accident or cosmic coincidence, but with intention. Meanwhile, outside the control room, the desert air was still cold, the stars blinking overhead like distant watchers. I stepped outside for a moment, pulling on my jacket, and looked up. I thought about the millions of worlds out there, the vast dark sea between stars, and the sudden, impossible fact that something was reaching across it all to speak to us. And yet, no one was rushing to broadcast a reply. The world's space agencies had sealed themselves in a collective silence, a respect perhaps born from awe or fear. Because what do you say when the universe finally calls your name? As the night deepened, I returned inside to the glow of monitors. Suddenly, the signal's pattern changed again. It tightened further, pulsing with a complexity that made my head spin. The triangular panels we'd glimpsed on 3i Atlas seemed to be rotating in perfect unison, almost like a cosmic metronome keeping time with the message. Then Emily's voice cut through the room. This isn't just a visitor passing through. It's a machine. And it's alive. I swallowed hard. Alive. The word echoed in my mind. But before we could absorb what that meant, the object began a slow, deliberate deceleration, as if it was applying the brakes on its journey through our solar system. I looked at the trajectory charts. A natural comet or asteroid would be speeding up, pulled relentlessly by the sun's gravity. But this was different. It was defying physics, or at least the physics we understood. And then, just as I was starting to think I might have lost my mind, the signal went silent. Not a glitch, not a fade. Complete, utter silence. The kind that screams louder than any noise. Because 3i Atlas was about to disappear behind the sun. And with it, the answers we'd been chasing for months. The countdown to darkness had begun. The sun's glare swallowed 3i Atlas whole, as if a cosmic curtain had dropped, plunging us into a void of uncertainty. For 3 long weeks, the object vanished from every telescope, every antenna, and every eager eye scattered across the globe. In the Mojave control room, the usual buzz of activity faded into a tense, oppressive quiet. It was the kind of silence that gnawed at your nerves, making seconds feel like hours and hours like days. I found myself wandering the dimly lit halls, restless and unable to shake the feeling that we were waiting for something. Something far bigger than any of us could imagine. One evening, Emily slipped into the room wearing a midnight blue blouse that shimmered under the fluorescent lights, paired with slim black trousers and subtle silver earrings shaped like stars. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of exhaustion and determination. She poured herself a cup of coffee and joined me by the observation window overlooking the desert. The sky was a canvas of twinkling lights, indifferent to our earthly anxieties. "We're not just losing sight of a rock," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the horizon. "We're losing sight of a question." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. What was 3i Atlas really? A ghostly messenger? A machine? Or something else entirely? Then, as if to shatter the suffocating quiet, the monitors flickered to life. A new signal had begun, but it wasn't coming from deep space. It was coming from Earth itself. The same pulse pattern, the same hydrogen frequency, but faint like an echo. And it was originating from the South Atlantic anomaly, a strange, mysterious region in Earth's upper atmosphere where the planet's magnetic field dips precariously low. Rachel, the cryptographer, was the first to spot it. Her voice trembled as she called us over. This can't be right." The signal was a mirror of the one we'd received from 3i Atlas, but weaker, as if the planet itself was responding, or perhaps reflecting. It was as though the probe had sent a question, and Earth was whispering back. The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Scientists scrambled to verify the data, cross-checking with satellites and ground stations. Theories flew faster than the signals themselves. Was this an echo, planetary response, or proof that whatever had sent the original message had already embedded itself within our world? I caught a glimpse of Jack again, the grizzled engineer, leaning back in his chair with a wry grin. "Well, Tom," he said, "I always thought Earth had secrets. Looks like the universe just confirmed it." But beneath the humor was an unmistakable current of unease. Meanwhile, satellites around the globe recorded something else. Tiny, reflective points of light breaking away from the main body of 3i Atlas before it disappeared behind the sun. At first, we thought it was debris, ice, dust, the usual suspects, but the fragments didn't drift randomly. They moved in perfect, synchronized formation, rotating and aligning themselves like dancers performing a choreography written in the language of the cosmos. "A deployment pattern," someone whispered. A term new enough to make even the veterans pause. The swarm was alive, coordinated, and purposeful. Our instruments picked up faint, sharp pulses like sonar pings, bouncing across multiple frequencies. It was as if the fragments were mapping everything around them, building a three-dimensional portrait of our solar system with breathtaking speed and precision. The more we learned, the deeper the mystery grew. The swarm wasn't merely observing. It was communicating with each other, with the probe, perhaps even with something beyond our solar neighborhood. And as the fragments hummed their eerie song, the question that haunted us all settled in the room like a cold draft. What was 3i Atlas really preparing for? Outside, the desert winds whispered through the night, carrying with them a silence heavier than ever before. Because this was no longer just a visitor passing through. This was the beginning of something far more profound. And none of us knew if the world was ready. The mornings in Mojave had started to lose their golden warmth, replaced by a brittle chill that seeped through the cracks of the control room's concrete walls. I sat at my station, fingers hovering over the keyboard, eyes locked on the swirling cascade of data streaming from the array. The fragments, the swarm, were growing more active, their synchronized dance becoming a symphony of light and signal. Each point of reflected sunlight was like a tiny lighthouse, flickering with intent. Emily entered, her auburn hair pulled back in a loose bun, strands escaping to frame her face. She wore a form-fitting charcoal gray sweater and a slender silver bracelet that caught the light every time she moved. There was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. She slid into the chair beside me without a word, eyes immediately on the display. "Tom," she said softly, "have you seen this?" On the screen, a graph pulsed rhythmically. A series of electromagnetic ripples, faint but unmistakable, washing across multiple observatories in perfect harmony. At first glance, it looked like cosmic white noise, the kind of background hiss we'd learned to ignore. But when overlaid, the pattern emerged, structured, methodical, deliberate. Rachel, hunched over her cryptography setup, explained it best. "It's not noise. It's a message hidden inside the silence. A code written between the gaps." I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to wrap my head around it. A message in the pauses? That's like trying to eavesdrop on a conversation where the silence speaks louder than the words. Emily nodded. "Exactly. This punctuation. Breaths. Instructions, maybe." The swarm, it seemed, was more than a scattering of probes. It was a network, a distributed consciousness, a hive mind stretching across millions of kilometers of empty space. And the pulses were its language. Jack shuffled over, coffee in hand, and offered a rare smile. "Looks like the universe's version of a group chat," he quipped. "Only we're the ones on mute." But beneath the lightheartedness, the stakes were staggering. If these fragments were nodes in a greater whole capable of communication and coordinated action, then what we were witnessing wasn't just observation, it was interaction. Then came the orbital data. The swarm's movement was no accident. They weren't drifting outward, lost in the solar wind. They were charging. drawing power, aligning themselves along magnetic fields. The thermal readings from infrared telescopes showed rising energy signatures, not from heat, but from power. It was like watching a machine awaken, each fragment humming with potential. And 3I Atlas itself was changing. The triangular plates that had puzzled astronomers for months began to shift, sliding into new alignments like the gears of an ancient clock resetting for a new time. Emily stared at the imagery, eyes wide. "It's a metamorphosis," she whispered. "A mechanical transformation on a scale we've never seen." The control room's atmosphere thickened. The air was charged with a mixture of awe and dread. We were no longer passive observers of an interstellar visitor. We were witnesses to a cosmic awakening. Then, the most startling data arrived. Energy readings from the sun showed faint, impossible echoes, the flare shadows. Whenever the sun erupted with a burst of radiation, a subtle, unnatural bend in the light curved around the probe, as if space itself was warping in response. Jack muttered, "Containment field. A bubble of distorted spacetime. Tech that's light years ahead of us." The implications rolled through my mind like thunder. This wasn't just a probe, it was a fortress. A quantum engine feeding directly off our star's light. A machine powered by the sun itself. And as the object hummed to life, the signal changed once more. The familiar 11.3-second pulse vanished, replaced by a single continuous tone. Pure, unwavering, and unlike anything Earth had ever heard. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine, because for the first time we weren't just detecting alien technology. We were hearing it speak. But what it said next would leave us all questioning everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos. The continuous tone filled the control room, reverberating softly through the speakers like a deep, steady heartbeat. It wasn't a sound you could describe as music, but there was an eerie harmony to it. A resonance that seemed to vibrate not just through the air, but through the very bones of anyone listening. I caught Emily's eyes, and for a moment, the usual scientific composure cracked, replaced by raw wonder. She was dressed in a tailored emerald green blouse that made her pale skin glow under the dim lights, paired with a sleek black skirt that swayed just enough when she moved to suggest a quiet confidence. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something profound but wasn't sure where to begin. Rachel was already furiously typing, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with a kind of desperate urgency. "The energy signature," she said breathlessly. "It's unlike anything chemical or nuclear. It's clean, coherent, almost quantum in nature." Jack, standing by the window, cracked a rare smile. "So, we're basically listening to a cosmic power plant firing up. No pressure, right?" I tried to laugh but felt a knot tightening in my chest. This wasn't just an engine starting, it was a declaration. The probe was alive, aware, and engaged. Then came the images. The triangular panels on 3I Atlas began shifting with purpose, aligning into a perfect 127-meter grid. A number that sent chills down my spine because it matched the internal geometry the James Webb Space Telescope had glimpsed weeks ago. The grid vibrated, resonating at a frequency we could measure. It was the sound of a machine awakening from eons of slumber. Emily turned to the team, voice steady but charged. "This is intent. Not random noise. Not natural phenomena. This is a message embedded in geometry and physics." The room grew silent except for the hum of machines and the steady pulse of the signal. Then, the data analysts noticed something extraordinary in the transmission structure. A complex pattern of concentric spirals overlapping like a cosmic fingerprint. Some saw a magnetic field map. Others saw the eerie outline of an inverted DNA double helix. I found myself staring at the spirals on the screen, feeling like I was peering into the blueprint of life itself. It was as if this ancient machine was not only communicating but sharing a secret woven into the very fabric of biology and the cosmos. And then came the final, chilling piece. Buried deep in the transmission was the echo from Earth's own upper atmosphere, the faint pulse from the South Atlantic anomaly, rebroadcast as if the probe was playing back our planetary heartbeat. Cosmic mirror. The probe wasn't just observing, it was acknowledging. The implications hit like a thunderclap. We weren't just on the receiving end of a message. We were part of the message. Emily's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. This changes everything. It's not a greeting. It's a report, catalog, an ancient machine fulfilling its purpose, a librarian scanning the stories of worlds. I glanced around, feeling the weight of her words settle over us like a heavy fog. The universe was a library, and 3i Atlas was its tireless librarian. But what story was it telling about us? Before anyone could answer, the swarm's pings intensified, building into a rapid-fire chorus that filled every monitor. The fragments were awakening fully, their coordinated dance now a symphony of 1,000 tiny lights. And the signal's focus shifted again, no longer aimed at Earth, but blasting outward, a powerful beam streaming into the deep void beyond our solar system. The probe was sending its report home, or perhaps issuing a warning. As the room pulsed with tension, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next would change humanity forever, because the silence that followed was deeper than space itself. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond the stars, an answer was waiting. The days after the signal shifted outward were a strange blend of hope and dread. The world seemed to hold its breath, watching as 3i Atlas slowly charted a new course, not fleeing, but deliberately steering toward the asteroid belt. The Mojave control room had become a hive of restless activity. Every screen displayed cascading streams of data, every scientist glued to their stations. Yet the atmosphere was thick with unspoken questions. Emily appeared more pensive than usual. Her usual crisp attire softened into a cozy cream sweater and dark jeans, comfort against the storm of unknowns. She leaned over my console, eyes scanning the trajectory plots. The probe isn't just passing through. It's positioning itself, she murmured. If the swarm is deploying, this could be their staging ground. I swallowed hard. Staging ground. It sounded less like science and more like a thriller plot, and yet, nothing about this was ordinary. Then came the moment that sent a ripple through the entire scientific community. The Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile, still running final diagnostics, detected tiny reflective points peeling away from the main body. Dozens of them, each moving with unnerving precision. The fragments weren't tumbling like space debris. They were executing a choreographed ballet, maintaining perfect distances and formations. Jack, ever the pragmatist, muttered, "Debris doesn't do synchronized swimming." The term deployment pattern spread quickly through our internal communications. It was a phrase no astronomy textbook had prepared us for. These fragments were not mere leftovers. They were instruments of purpose, autonomous nodes forming a sprawling network. The radio telescopes picked up a new signal, a faint, sharp pulse bouncing through multiple frequencies, unlike any natural cosmic source. It wasn't a broadcast but a series of precise pings, scanning, mapping, constructing a detailed three-dimensional image of everything within range. Rachel, eyes wide and voice barely above a whisper, said, "It's like cosmic sonar." The mystery deepened. The origin of the pulses was impossible to pinpoint. They radiated from everywhere and nowhere, spreading like ripples across space. Could these fragments be communicating with each other, forming a collective intelligence? It was a terrifying and exhilarating thought. As the swarm grew more active, their thermal signatures climbed not from heat, but from power. They were charging, preparing for something. The question hanging over us. What? Was this an exploration? A warning? A prelude to contact? Outside the control room, the desert stars seemed indifferent, their cold light casting long shadows across the array's gleaming dishes. And then, something shifted. A subtle electromagnetic ripple, barely perceptible, pulsed through the network of observatories. At first dismissed as cosmic noise, it revealed itself as a structured, repeating sequence, matching 3i Atlas's trajectory perfectly. It wasn't coming from random space. It was coming from the object. And this time, the signal wasn't aimed at Earth. It was aimed outward, deeper into the void. Each burst of data lasted exactly 127 milliseconds, the same number etched into the probe's internal geometry.
A cosmic signature.
A fingerprint. "I'm here," it seemed to say. And then the silence. The kind of silence that spoke louder than any signal. Because somewhere, beyond our reach, a reply might already be forming. The silence that settled over the control room was heavy, almost tangible. It pressed against us like the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. I sat back, exhaustion tugging at my eyelids, but the hum of the monitors kept me tethered to the moment. Outside, the Mojave Desert stars glittered cold and distant, indifferent to the drama unfolding below. Emily leaned over the console, her fingers tracing the complex waveforms on the screen, her expression unreadable. Dressed now in a soft burgundy blouse and tailored black slacks, she seemed both weary and resolute. A scientist grappling with a truth too vast to fully comprehend. The structured silence, she murmured. It's like punctuation in a sentence, pauses that mean something, possibly instructions or even acknowledgments. Rachel nodded vigorously from her station, her nimble fingers flying across the keyboard. If that's true, then whoever or whatever is on the other end is replying. There's a conversation happening, but it's in a language we barely understand. Jack, leaning against the wall with a half-empty mug of coffee, cracked a rare smile. Great, we're eavesdropping on the universe's slowest text message. But beneath the humor was a creeping sense of awe and unease. We were no longer just observers, we were participants in a cosmic dialogue. The question that haunted all of us. Why now? Why choose this moment, this place, this young, noisy civilization on a small blue planet? Theories swirled through the room like the desert winds outside. Emily proposed 3 possibilities quietly but firmly. The first, she said, is the ghost ship hypothesis. 3I Atlas is an ancient probe, sent eons ago by a civilization long extinct. It's carrying out its programmed mission, observing, cataloging, reporting, like a cosmic librarian. She paused, then continued. Second, the deployment hypothesis. The timing of the signal and the swarm's release suggest a tactical move. The probe may be deploying secondary units during its solar occultation, sending out scouts or sensors while it's hidden from our view. Her eyes flickered to mine. And third, the contact hypothesis, the most profound. This entire sequence may be a test, an invitation, a way to observe how we respond. To measure our curiosity, cooperation, and silence. I felt the weight of those words settle in my chest. If this was a test, then our silence and focused observation were being logged, analyzed. We were data. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Then the monitors flickered. The fragments of the swarm began to shift again. Not randomly, but with purpose, spiraling inward, aligning along the probe's magnetic poles. They formed glowing rings, visible even in infrared, a celestial collar of light and intent. And 3I Atlas started to emit its own energy, not reflected sunlight, but raw, structured radiation. A pulse so coherent it defied known physics. It was a quantum engine awakening, feeding on the sun's light, a machine of unimaginable scale coming to life before our eyes. The triangular plates slid into new positions, the 127-meter grid vibrating with a steady rhythm. Then the signal changed once more. The complex spiral pattern vanished, replaced by a single, powerful continuous tone. For the first time, it felt like the probe was no longer just a visitor or observer. It was a participant. And as the tone filled the room, I couldn't help but wonder, had humanity just crossed a threshold? One where the universe stopped being a silent ocean and became a conversation? But the answer was still out there, beyond the stars, waiting. And waiting always carries the weight of the unknown. The days stretched on, a slow, relentless march toward the unknown. The Mojave control room had become a crucible of tension and fascination. Every face was etched with concentration, every conversation laced with cautious wonder. The probe, 3I Atlas, was no longer just an enigma drifting through our solar system. It was a living riddle demanding answers. Emily stood by the panoramic window, her silhouette outlined against the desert twilight. Tonight, she wore a deep navy dress that flowed just past her knees, paired with elegant black heels that clicked softly on the tiled floor. Around her neck hung a delicate silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a spiral galaxy. A subtle nod to the cosmic mystery consuming her thoughts. She turned to me, her eyes reflecting the stars outside. Tom, do you ever think about what it means? That this machine, this visitor from the stars, might be cataloging us? Watching everything we do? I shrugged, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. I guess I always thought we were the ones searching for answers out there. Now, maybe we're the ones being studied. Rachel's voice broke through the quiet hum of machines. The latest data from the swarm shows increasing activity. The fragments are drawing in solar energy at an exponential rate. They're charging, preparing. Jack, ever the skeptic, grunted. Preparing for what? A cosmic tea party. We all chuckled, but the joke fell flat beneath the gravity of the situation. Then came the reports from the orbiting solar observatories. Every solar flare, every burst of radiation from the sun was now accompanied by a faint, impossible echo. A flare shadow bending around 3I Atlas. It was as if the probe was manipulating spacetime itself, cloaked in a containment field beyond our understanding. Emily's brow furrowed. The physics here, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. This is technology light years beyond us. The triangular plates on the probe shifted again, sliding into new configurations with a precision that sent shivers down my spine. The 127-meter grid vibrated, resonating like a cosmic heartbeat. Suddenly, the signal burst into a torrent, a flood of data streaming outward at an intensity amplified 1,000-fold by the sun's energy. The hydrogen line was still there, but now it carried layers upon layers of complex information. Rachel was ecstatic, fingers flying over her keyboard. Mathematics, prime numbers, geometric progressions, all universal languages. But beneath that, encoded biology, amino acid chains, protein structures, the blueprint of life. The room fell silent as the realization sank in. This wasn't just a machine reporting. It was sharing a story, our story. And then, deep within the transmission, the faint echo from Earth's upper atmosphere, the South Atlantic anomaly, reappeared, rebroadcast by the probe, a cosmic mirror reflecting our own pulse back at us. Emily whispered, "It's acknowledging us," confirming the scan was successful. For a moment, the vastness of space felt a little smaller. But the questions only multiplied. What now? Were we ready to respond? Would we even know how? And as the probe swarm continued to pulse and prepare in the asteroid belt, the world held its breath. Because whatever came next would not be a message. It would be a reckoning. The tension in the Mojave control room was palpable, like the quiet before a storm. Every eye was fixed on the glowing screens that displayed the latest data from 3I Atlas and its expanding swarm. The fragments were no longer just passive observers. They had become an active presence, a network of intelligence weaving itself through the solar system. Emily paced slowly, her tailored burgundy jacket pulled snug around her as if shielding herself from the unknown. Her sharp eyes caught every detail, every anomaly. "The swarm's movements," she said thoughtfully, "are no longer random. They're coordinating with a purpose we can't yet decipher." Jack leaned back, rubbing his jaw. Purpose or not, they're not here for sightseeing. Something's coming. Rachel was already deep into decoding the torrent of data streaming from the probe. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she unraveled layers of mathematics, geometry, and biology encoded in the signal. "It's like a cosmic Rosetta Stone," she said breathlessly. "A universal language that transcends biology and physics." The room buzzed with excitement and unease. The probe's broadcast was no longer just a message. It was a declaration, a challenge. Then, the unexpected happened. Across multiple observatories, a faint electromagnetic ripple appeared, subtle and almost imperceptible. At first, it blended into the cosmic background, dismissed as noise. But when data from different telescopes were overlaid, a pattern emerged. A structured, repeating sequence perfectly matched to 3I Atlas's trajectory. This signal wasn't coming from the probe. It was coming from Earth. The South Atlantic anomaly, the same mysterious region where the faint echo had originated, was now broadcasting a pulse mirroring the probe's pattern. Emily's face paled. "It's a response," Jack muttered. "Or a trap." The realization sent a ripple through the team. Was Earth itself sending a message back? An unintentional reply? Or had something else taken hold in our upper atmosphere, broadcasting on our behalf? As the swarm's fragments began to pulse faster, their collective energy building like a rising tide, the probe adjusted its course subtly, steering deeper into the asteroid belt. The deployment was far from over. The data showed the fragments aligning into glowing rings around the probe's magnetic poles, a celestial crown of light and intent. And then the signal changed. The elegant spirals and pulses gave way to a new pattern, a sequence of long, perfect silences interspersed with bursts of complex data. Cryptographers suggested these silences were not emptiness but punctuation, instructions or acknowledgments exchanged between unknown parties. Emily looked at me, her voice barely above a whisper. "If this communication is two-way, then someone or something is listening and replying." The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, because it meant we were no longer alone in the conversation. But it also raised the ultimate question: who else was out there? And what awaited us on the other end of that silent reply? Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly, indifferent to human wonder and fear. And yet, somewhere beyond the stars, the universe was listening, waiting, watching, and perhaps deciding. The moment 3I Atlas slipped behind the sun on October 29th felt like the universe itself had held its breath. For 3 agonizing weeks, every telescope, every sensor, every antenna was trained on the darkened expanse where the probe had vanished, blind to its presence, deaf to its signal. The silence was suffocating. Emily stood near the window, her midnight blue dress swaying gently as she paced, the soft click of her heels echoing against the cold floor. Her eyes, sharp and searching, betrayed a storm of emotions. Anticipation, fear, and something deeper, an unspoken hope. Then, just as the observation window reopened, the world's greatest telescopes fixed their gaze on the predicted spot. What they saw defied every expectation. 3I Atlas was back, but not as before. Its trajectory had shifted subtly but deliberately, a course correction made in the shadows of the sun. The swarm's pings intensified, a rapid-fire chorus painting a three-dimensional map of the asteroid belt, their movements precise and coordinated. But the most startling revelation was the signal. The familiar 11.3-second pulse was gone, replaced by a continuous, tight beam blasting outward into the cosmic dark. Its intensity was amplified 1,000-fold by the sun's energy, carrying layers upon layers of complex data, mathematics, geometry, biology, all woven into a tapestry of cosmic communication. Rachel's voice trembled as she decoded the latest transmission. "It's not just reporting. It's broadcasting a story of life, of carbon-based existence, of Earth itself." Emily's gaze met mine, a profound gravity in her eyes. "We're not just being observed. We're being catalogued, studied, perhaps even judged." The swarm's fragments, now glowing rings of light around the probe's magnetic poles, pulsed in unison, a beacon of intent. And then the unexpected, the faint echo from Earth's upper atmosphere, the South Atlantic anomaly, resurfaced, broadcasting a pulse mirroring the probe's own pattern. A cosmic mirror reflecting our planetary heartbeat back into the void. The room fell silent, because the greatest mystery remained unsolved. Was this a greeting, a warning, or something far more complex? As the data streamed in, a chilling thought settled over us. 3I Atlas was not a visitor seeking contact. It was a seed, a machine designed to observe, to deploy, to spread. And as it prepared for its next phase, humanity faced a choice: to respond, to remain silent, or to prepare. Because the universe was no longer a distant, silent place. It was a stage set for a cosmic reckoning. And somewhere, beyond the veil of stars, a question hung in the darkness. Are we ready? The screen flickered, the signal pulsed, and then the transmission cut off, leaving us alone with the silence. But not for long, because the story was just beginning.